Okay, this problem asks us to show how to find the interquartile range. We will usually use an abbreviation for that, by the way. I'm just going to write it here. We usually just call it IQR, an abbreviation for interquartile range. Also, I want to remind you that when we find the range, we're just subtracting the larger number minus the smaller number. The range, the overall range, let me call it that. And that would be 9 minus 2. But that's not what they're asking us here. They're asking us for the interquartile range. So first, I want you to tell me how many, I'm going to count here, but how many numbers do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Don't we have 10 values? See that? So what we want to do is break these values. By the way, they're already in the correct order. If they weren't, we'd have to rearrange them. But I'm going to break this up into the smaller values, the smaller 5 values. These 5, I'm going to use yellow. And the larger values, I'll use a different color, maybe pink. Okay. Now we want to break up those two colors, those two groups of data, into their quartiles. Okay. So I'll use a green marker. For the smaller numbers, we want the lower half of the yellow numbers and the upper half of the yellow numbers. So what is the middle of those? We call it the first quartile. Isn't that going to be 3? So that would be our first quartile. Sometimes it's called Q sub 1. Sometimes it's called the first quartile. First quartile. And sometimes it's called the lower quartile. Let's also find, I'll use a different color here, the middle or the quartile for these upper data, which is in the middle of these pink group of numbers. And that would be 8. 8 would be our third quartile. We'll either call it Q sub 3 or the third quartile, or the sometimes called the upper quartile. Now, let me remind you that if I asked for the range, it would be the largest number, 9, minus the smallest number, 2, if I just asked for the range, and they do sometimes. But when they ask for the interquartile range, and let me circle this with a different color, it's not the largest number minus the smallest number. It's the largest quartile minus the smaller or the lower quartile. So let me shrink this a bit. And so our answer for the interquartile range will be 8 minus 3. IQR, I'm just going to use those letters instead of the words, is going to be 8 minus 3. So our answer will be 5. The interquartile range is the range between the upper quartile and the lower quartile, or the third quartile minus the first quartile. 8 minus 3, answer is 5. You think that's, does that make sense? You want to tell me if you have any questions right now? Okay, I'm going to stop this recording and you could watch it later if you want.